Alright guys, today we're taking a look at the Galil. This one here is a James River Armory remake. They produce these out of parts kits. So essentially the gas and sight block, the foregrip, bolt, not the fire control group I don't believe, top cover, stock, a lot of that stuff's all surplus parts out of Israel. This one here, when I bought it, actually did not have the bipod. I had to actually get this separately, and kind of neat stuff to that. So essentially what the Galil is it's AK for Jews, pretty much. So what happened was Israel was using the FAL, and during the one of their wars, I believe it was the 6-day war, 7-day war, something like that, they found that their FALs that they were using had a habit of malfunctioning with the sand and dust, while their enemies were using AKs, which had no issues whatsoever. Well, they captured a bunch of the AKs and were looking at them and really wanted something that was more AK-like, but wasn't an actual AK. They wanted to domestically produce it. So they did a little bit of research, and they actually got some Valmets, and were testing out the Valmets. And if you know anything about the Valmet, that's pretty much the highest quality AK you can get on the market, and excellent guns. So they tested a bunch of different AK variants and really liked the Valmet platform more than just the standard AK, and they kind of designed the Galil off of that. Now, the Galil was actually designed by a Russian that actually immigrated to Israel. And I believe it's Israeli Galil. He actually had a more Russian name, but when he started designing this rifle, he changed it because they didn't want such a Russian name attached to the gun. Excuse me, that's my 9 o'clock alarm. So, they went through, they designed the Galil. They took most of the stuff from the Valmet as far as the design. Rumor has it that some of the early Galil prototypes were actually built directly on Valmet receivers, and that's the rumor. Whether any of those survive or not, exist, who knows. They did keep the FAL buttstock, folding buttstock on it, because they did like that. Now I do have to say, on these, they are really stiff to work. I actually took this one apart and cut the spring, and it is still tough to actuate and fold. So I don't do it all that much. Basically, it works exactly like a regular AK. A selector. Same. But what's something interesting that they did with the Galil that the AKs don't have, they actually have an ambi safety on the back of it. So you can actuate the safety from the other side. Now, when from what I understand, when James River Armory and a few of the other companies that started producing these new manufactured ones from the parts kits, mainly the I believe the Galil is another one, and then this one here is the JRA Gallant. For some reason, they couldn't figure out the safety. And on the original, you would cam the safety forward for fire and back for safe. That way you couldn't accidentally hit it. But for some reason, none of the US builders can figure out how to make that right, because it's reversed. So you have to pull backwards to put into fire and forward to put into safe, which doesn't make sense, because when you're on fire, your thumb's kind of like on the safety. So kind of annoying on that. But I'll go over a little bit more of the specifics of this gun as far as the operating system and what makes it different from a regular AK variant back at the table. But just know that this is essentially an AK variant. It's not like the VZ58 where it looks like AK, but it's not AK. This is AK variant, just made in Israel. Now, of course, this one is made, it's chambered in 5.56 223. That's because the Israelis had a lot of good relations with the Americans at the time, and so they were using some uh, M16s and M4s at the time, which were actually ended up giving a bunch of them, which is why they didn't really use the Galil in large numbers, because they were getting M16s and M4s for free to almost nothing. So they didn't use a ton of these, but they were the service rifle for Israel for a good long time. Now it does have interesting. You do have 2-position peep sights on the rear. For 1 and 200 meters. Actually, I think it's 3 and 5. And for up close, and for night sights, you have this flip-up battle sight. That's just kind of a big U-notch. And then the front night sight post, which would originally have been tritium, but it's long died off, as this post is probably from at least the 70s. If not older. So let's get some shooting in, and then we'll go from there. Alright guys, welcome back to the bench. So let's get down to the technical and disassembly on the Galil. So first of all, the JRA Armory, which is what this is, they sent it with 1 Tapco mag, which this one has not given me any issues running. You can see it is kind of chewing itself into being fixed. The surplus Galil mags are available, and they have some long boys out there. I think they go all the way out to like 40 rounds or 45 or something like that. But they can be a little expensive. So right now, this is my only mag I have for this rifle. Now, some of the cool things with the JRA Armory, like I said, these are built from parts guns on new receivers. However, they try to keep these receivers as accurate as possible to make it look as accurate as a collector's rifle as possible. So for the safety notches, you have all 3 positions in Hebrew on it. And this will go all the way down into full auto position, but obviously it doesn't do anything. So you do have all 3 positions, and then you have the same thing on the back side for the safety. And then they did try to it's not an exact copy of what is on the original IWIs, but they did put the Star of David. They tried to make a crest that looks authentic as well. So those are the markings that they have that are replicas, and of course they have their serial number there, and then on the bottom side they have their JRA Armory stuff information down there. So they try to make it as authentic looking as possible. Something I did forgot to mention at the range is this little cutout here. So there actually is a rail that does go with this gun that is a factory rail. They are really expensive and pretty rare, and from what I understand, they weren't the best, and they were rarely used to begin with. So they weren't exactly all that great. If I was to put a rail on this, I actually am currently working on another rail. I got this surplus cover that's in the white, and I'm actually going to be welding on a piece of pick rail that is made for an HK. So like for my SETME, it's going to have something similar to that, and the only reason you could do this with Galil over a regular AK is the mounting system for the dust cover, and I'll go over that here in a minute. So you can see they got this really interesting blocky handguard, which is loose. I actually don't like the retaining system on this. Actually, when I took it apart and put it back together, it just, I don't know. I just don't particularly, I'm not fond of it. It's blocky, but it has its purposes. It's made to retain the, the bipod on this. Now, interesting about the bipod is part of the designs that they put into the Galil is two folds on here. So with the FALs, the Israeli military had an issue with the soldiers using the magazine feed lips to bust open bottle caps. So one of the things that they did is when they designed the bipod system for this, they actually made it to where this groove right here is actually just the right size to pop open a bottle cap. I guess they figured instead of trying to train their soldiers not to do it and yell at them, it's easier just to add a function into the gun. As well, on the bipod, this section right here can also be used to pop a bottle cap, but this does have another function. This is actually a wire cutter. So essentially, if you like have barbed wire or something like that, some lighter gauge wire you need to cut, you would put it through here, open your bayonet, and use your bayonet to shear that wire. So that was one of the things that they added into the rifle as far as a little extra feature. As I mentioned, you know, the JRAs, these are made from parts kits. The only part that's not that's new manufacturer besides the receiver and the barrel that I believe is this grip that is sent with it, and that's probably just for 922R compliance. To be honest, 922R is one of those laws that really is kind of pointless. There's only ever been 3 convictions of it that I know of, and all 3 of those convictions were just tack-ons to a bigger conviction. So anyways, so they got the bipod on here, which is a really cool function, extra on there. These also would have had a bayonet lug. Of course, the JRAs don't have it, although I suspect there's no particular reason why they couldn't produce these with the bayonet lug, seeing how they're building them stateside with import parts. I believe the bayonet import law only dictates on whole imported guns. That's why you see on a lot of AKs and stuff like that, the bayonet lugs are missing or ground off or something like that. So I don't see why they couldn't produce these with bayonet lugs, and I want to say some of them are produced with bayonet lugs. But like I said, over onto the sights, you have a nice protected hood sight that is adjustable with AKs, AK sights for the elevation, but you do have windage on these as well. You have these 2 screws that I believe you back in and push in, back in and back out in order to drift the whole sight post one way or the other. And like I said, you got this rear sight block on the back that's directly on the dust cover, and half position like this gives you for your battle sights, or you tip your battle sights back, and then you have your 500 and 300 meter peep sights. Now let's get into the disassembly on this gun. Now, one of the things that's interesting about these, why this design tends to be more accurate than other AKs, besides being in 223, is the way that this dust cover is set up. First of all, having your sight right back here, you have a much longer sight radius, so that improves accuracy on its own. The next thing is the way this dust cover attaches. So, first of all, show the gun is clear. It's clear. And of course, it does have this upturn handle, so you can rack this either way. This gun is more meant to be racked with the right hand over the top, as opposed to your left hand over the top, as opposed to your right hand. This means you can keep your hand on your grip, ready to go if you're clearing a malfunction. You do have to have it in fire. Now, you notice, unlike other AKs, you have this really long detent button, disassembly latch, unlike other AKs. And that's part of the locking system for this dust cover. So you have to push it in, and you really have to kind of... One second, my cats are fighting each other. here and kind of deal with this. Y'all two knock it off. So you do have this really long detent, and then you have to kind of lift back and push back. Now what's interesting about this system is, if you notice on the dust cover, it's reinforced in the back, and it sits really deeply inside of this lug right here, and actually comes over the side quite a bit with quite a snug fit. And I'll show you that once I get everything out so you can see it a little easier. You can see these do ship with a buffer inside of them. So you got your basic AK spring, basic AK bolt carrier group and bolt, you know, obviously 556223. The gas piston has this interesting little cross section on it right there, and I'm not exactly sure what the function of that is. Now, for the gas tube, unlike on other AKs where you have the block here and you have to crank it over, it actually just slides in and out. So you see it sits right on top of the gas block here and locks in like that, and then it dovetails in to the receiver itself. And this is part of what, well, one, makes it a simpler system. You have less parts on it, it's lighter, but that's part of that accuracy and how this thing goes together, because ultimately when you put your dust cover on, your dust cover locks in to this. So your dust cover goes into the gas tube. I can get it on here properly. And you have to actually kind of, you look, there's this recess that actually fits inside of it, like so. So you gotta line that up, get that sit inside, and then you can force your dust cover on top. And you can see, even with no spring tension or retainer on it, everything is very solid. So that's part of why that system works. Now, the one that I have that I'm going to be welding the rail on top of, you can see it is a slightly different setup. It doesn't have this section quite as long, which I wish it did. It would have made welding the rail on a little easier. But I think this is actually a much older surplus one. This one goes on, but it's a much tighter fit. I have to actually kind of beat this on here to get it to go on, which for what I'm wanting to do is a good thing, because that means this thing is not going to move at all. It gives me a lot of accuracy. So you see it's got a couple gas ports on top, and here you go, you're field stripped already. And you see it's you got a lot less going on here. These are milled receivers, and overall it's just a simple design. I would almost say that the Galil is a more optimized version of the AK than, say, even like the modern AK-12 is. The modern AK-12, all they really did is they optimized, mounting options. But the original Galil, as far as the platform itself, really was optimized to be as simple and efficient as possible and still be reliable. See, disassembly exactly as in reverse. Now the bolts, I've had a little bit of trouble getting this thing rotated just right to go in here sometimes. I didn't have any trouble that time. Alright, we are in. Now, there's a trick on the Galil, and this actually kind of works somewhat on other AKs as well, as far as assembling the dust cover, but because this one is so tight and this button is so much longer than regular AKs, what you can do is you go to mount it, and you just barely get it sitting on the edge, like so. So then you go in carefully, install your dust cover before it's in place, and then hold it down, and then all you do if it works right, is try to rack your slide. And what it should do is just like that, pop that button out. It makes it a lot easier than trying to keep that depressed and move it back in and all that stuff. Now, as I mentioned before, on this folding buttstock, it does depress right here on this. You're supposed to, the whole stock's supposed to move up. It's just like the one that's on my Henry. However, this spring is really stiff in here. I even already took this out and cut the spring down a little bit, and it's still really hard to actuate. I'm probably going to go through and cut it again. However, you know, that I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm not too concerned about being able to fold the stock and whatnot. Now let's move back up to the muzzle. You do have a muzzle brake. I'm not sure what the thread pitch pattern is on these, but I do know the A2 birdcage does a pretty good job with this. It's 5.56-223. This thing doesn't have a ton of recoil to begin with, so you know, it's more or less just a flash hider. However, these are supposed to run fairly well suppressed. They do make the adjustable gas piston for these, just like I have on another gun that we're going to be getting to. So normally if you're going to run the suppress, you want that adjustable gas piston so you can turn down the gas a little bit. But besides that, these are supposed to run relatively well suppressed, and I have seen them run without the gas piston on it, with just the buffer, and be okay. So that's kind of neither here or there. I don't plan on running this one suppressed anytime soon. But as far as the birdcage goes, it's good enough for what it is. It's 223. This thing could have a straight cut barrel and it still wouldn't have all that bad recoil. So turn this thing around. Now, it being a milled receiver, it is heavier than a stamped receiver, but you got to give some to get some, you know. But these are known to be really reliable. The James Rivers armories, kind of like the Century Arms, have kind of a rocky reputation as far as being reliable. I've not had an issue out of this gun as of yet. Now, when you buy one of these, the first thing in the owner's manual says, in bold, do not run steel case ammunition through it. Well, it's an AK. If it's not going to run steel, it doesn't deserve brass. So I've yet to run steel through it yet. However, when I do, I'll report back if anything odd happens or not. But anyways, this if you can get one, I would get them now. They're running out. This one here was just a little over $1,000. I got it on Classic Firearms. As far as now, I believe they are probably out of stock, because I wanted the wood foregrip and they actually ran out, so I had to get the plastic. And that was a couple weeks ago now, almost about 3 weeks ago now. So I'm gonna assume that they are probably out of stock by now, with no idea when they're going to be bringing more in. Now, something I did forget though. So IWI does have a new version of the Galil out. It's the Galil Ace. It's pretty much the same platform, but modernized. And I will say, as far as it goes, it's like I said, how this is an optimized version of the AK, what the AK should be. And, you know, as far as the base platform, I think is better than the AK-12. Well, the Galil, I think, is even better than the AK-12 as well, as it took this and modernized it and optimized it even more, but then gave you all the mounting options that you want in a modern firearm. And now the Ace, they do come in the 5.56-223. They come in 308 or 762x51 NATO, and also 762x39. Now, as the original Galils, I believe, only came in 5.56, and I think there were some 7.62 NATO ones as well. I don't believe the original ones ever came in 7.62x39. I might be wrong on that. But I wouldn't mind getting a Galil Ace on the channel at some point, especially to do a comparison between this Galil, the original platform, and the new platform. to go for and do a comparison. I am planning a comparison video where I am going to be comparing the VZ58, the SKS, the Galil, and a true AK pattern rifle, as most people know the AK pattern rifle, together as kind of a timeline of what how the developments went through, and then also kind of the difference between guns that people confuse as all being AKs. So that might be coming around. I'm also planning on doing some video game related content maybe here in the next couple weeks. That's going to be video game and gun related. So I'll stay tuned for that. And I got a couple of handguns, and I do got more gun reviews on the way. So I'll see y'all guys next time. Y'all have a good one.